Der Jäger zieht seine Maschine zum neuen Angriff hoch.
Even though this B-17 has its undercarriage down, the German fighter continues to bore in ever closer in its determination to shoot it down. As the bomber plunges to earth, a parachute indicates that some of the crew have managed to jump out of their aircraft. Reaching the ground, the survivors are rounded up and taken prisoner by Luftwaffe personnel. A crewman who was killed is recovered on a stretcher and taken away for burial. Major Heinz Baer examines a B-17 downed by him in the combat of February the 22nd. We previously saw him in Tunisia. By February 1944, Baer was one of Germany's foremost experten, having served in the East and in the West. By war's end, his score would stand at 221 victories, including Miss Quachita, a B-17F from the 91st Bomb Group at Bassingbourn. She's seen here on the hard stand with her ground crew shortly before being lost over Germany. Images of crashed American bombers and fighters taken from Holland through to Germany became part of the stock-in trade of the newsreels in this period.
Das Innere eines Terrorbombers.
When, in March 1944, the 8th Air Force launched its first bombing raid on Berlin, known as Big B to American air crews, many B-17 squadrons were flying the G variant of this famous bomber. The most noticeable difference was a chin turret under the nose, mounting 2 machine guns. This design feature had been introduced to give the big Boeing greater firepower across its frontal arc, where it had proven most vulnerable to head-on attacks from Luftwaffe fighters. In late 1943, the US Army Air Force also decided to drop the olive drab camo used on both B-17s and B-24s and employ instead the bombers in their natural metal finish. These B-17Gs belong to the 92nd Bombardment Group based at Alconbury in Cambridgeshire. Having taken some hours to assemble their formations over East Anglia, the forts headed out over the North Sea for the coast of Holland. The contrails flow back from their wings, making them visible at great distances. As the bomber streams begin to cross the coast, they cut huge swathes of white across the bright blue sky as hundreds of B-17s and B-24s head towards Germany and Berlin. Miles below and to the north, observers on the flak ships on the Zuyder Zee track their passage and send details of their heading and the approximate size of the raiding force to fighter control. As news of the incoming raid is passed on to the fighter bases, those nearest to the bomber streams are placed on full alert. Pilots strap themselves into their 109s and FW-190s. As the American bomber formations take up a heading for Berlin, the long-range warning sees a rush of activity in the capital city as the population remove themselves to the underground bomb shelters. In a short while, the trams are stopped and the streets are deserted.
In den Fabriken besetzen die Brandwachen ihre Plätze. In Krankenhäusern werden die Patienten in bombensichere Bunker gebracht. Die Feindverbände kommen näher.
The coordination of the day fighter response is undertaken at the underground command and control bunkers built by the Germans in 1943 at Arnhem-Dielen in Holland, with another 4 constructed at sites in Germany. The incoming information was processed and the bomber formation's size, height, speed and direction plotted on large wall maps of Germany that are divided into control boxes.
10 viermotorige Flugzeuge, Liberator, hoch mit Westkurs. Dabei viele deutsche Jäger. In Ulrich, Ludwig,
The plots are continually updated to ensure that the presumed target does not prove to be a feint as the bomber stream diverts to a different target. In the meantime, the first contact is made with the bombers by the Jagdwaffe and the first combat encounter of the raid begins. Anti-aircraft guns also start firing at the bombers as they cross the first of the heavy flak belts that bisect their route to Berlin. German soldiers examine the wreckage of a downed B-17 as the crew are picked up.
You are burned. Burnt. Very dangerous. It's painful.
No, it's not painful.
Your name is Philip J. Gibbons.
Yes, sir.
Gibbons, G-E-B-B-O-N-S. Are you wounded?
Twisted ankle.
Twisted ankle, but that's all. You can walk after all.
Yes.
Gräber gefallener Amerikaner.
A returning Focke-Wulf 190 roars across his airfield, waggling his wing to signify a kill. In the tradition of all fighter pilots, he relives his experience for the benefit of his ground crew and other pilots. On the first Berlin raids in March 1944, the German pilots had much to be pleased about, as on the 6th they shot down 68 B-17 and B-24s and 11 escort fighters. 2 days later, the Americans lost another 37 bombers, but thereafter German fighter losses began to rise steeply as escort fighters began to take their toll of the defenders.
Geschwaderkommodore Oberst Ösau erzählt uns von ihnen.
Giving the Thunderbolt longer legs was achieved when 200-gallon drop tanks were fitted in the summer of 1943. While they could now fly up to 375 miles before turning back, this didn't enable them to run all the way with the bombers to targets much deeper in Germany. Fuel was used up more quickly by staying close to the bombers as they tracked into the Reich, warding off enemy fighters. The Jagdflieger soon learned to feign attacks on the bomber formations to get the P-47s to drop their tanks early, believing combat was imminent. The Germans then pulled away, waited for the big US fighter to turn back as fuel ran low, and only then attacked the B-17s and B-24s. Nemesis for the Jagdwaffe finally came in the form of the P-51 Mustang. Although those seen here are the late model 51Ds of the 355th Fighter Group in April 1945, the earlier B model was first encountered in the long-range escort role by the Luftwaffe in December 1943. This model carried only 4 machine guns. By the spring of '44, the P-51Bs were reaching deep into Germany, having increased their range to 1,200 miles. The introduction of the 6-gunned, longer-ranged bubble canopy D model in May gave the US 8th Air Force a fighter that could range all over Germany and beyond, and which had a higher performance than either the 109 or FW-190. By that time, US pilots had been given the green light to go after the Jagdflieger wherever they could be found. In the first 3 months of 1944, following major operations such as Big Week, losses in the Jagdwaffe began to rise. This gun camera footage from Mustangs and Thunderbolts showing the destruction of Me-109s and FW-190s over Germany serves only to underpin the highly pessimistic report of Inspector of Fighters Adolf Galland to Goering. Between January and April 1944, our day fighter arm lost more than 1,000 pilots. They included our best Staffel, Gruppe and Geschwader commanders. Each incursion by the enemy is costing us about 50 aircrew. The time has come when our force is within sight of collapse. Foremost among these losses was Walter Uzo, Geschwader Commodore of JG-1. Described as one of the toughest pilots in the Luftwaffe, Uzo had downed 127 enemy aircraft when he was caught by P-38 Lightnings and Mustangs and brought down near Aachen. Bomber specialist Egon Meyer, the first pilot to destroy 100 planes on the Western Front, was downed in March 1944. Another loss was Hans Phipps Philip, with 206 victories, shot down the previous October by P-47s over Nordhorn. Losses, however, were not totally one-sided. Gun camera footage taken from Me-109s and FW-190s show kills over Germany of P-38 Lightnings, P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51D Mustangs. Newsreels shown to German audiences continued to show attacks on the US heavy bombers operating over the Reich. This film is excellent testimony to the destructive firepower of the German fighters when attacking the American heavy bombers. 20 and 30 millimeter cannon fire hitting the bomber airframes caused heavy damage and fire, especially when the cannon shells hit the engines. Of the two main types, the Americans and Germans found the B-24 Liberator to be more vulnerable to attack. By 1945, 8th Air Force was intending to standardize on the B-17. Although now quite long in the tooth and reaching the end of its development life, the Me-109 and its later G and K models was retained in production in 1944 under the Emergency Fighter Program. Volume production of a tried and tested aircraft, which was, by the standards of the time, also simple to manufacture, was deemed to be more important in the dire circumstances facing Germany than technical sophistication. The 109 lay at the heart of Adolf Galland's plan for the production of 3,000 fighters per month. Thus, the 109 soldiered on until the end of the conflict, still the most common mount of the Jagdflieger. With the invasion of Italy in 1943, bases became available for the operation of the heavy bombers of the US 15th Air Force. Even though the German army fought a skillful delaying action which slowed down the Allied advance up the peninsula, the skies above Italy could be traversed by Allied aircraft. B-17s and B-24s could take off from southern Italy and fly deep into Austria and Germany. By 1944, there was often coordination between the 8th Air Force in England and the 15th in Italy. An example was on the 22nd of February 1944 when heavy bombers of the 15th Air Force attacked the Messerschmitt Assembly Works at Regensburg. This was done to draw the German fighters southward and away from the raid being mounted by the 8th to the north. German fighter units based in northern Italy, Austria and southern Germany rose to give battle with the bomber formations of the 15th Air Force. The film seen here, showing the air battle between the respective forces, is being conducted over the Italian Alps.